Welcome, everybody, to the next edition of the Wireless Buffet. We are super excited for the conversation today. We've got two smart gentlemen that are going to be educating us and inspiring us and talking about amazing things in wireless technology. So let's jump right into it. I'll start off with introductions, and we'll throw it over to Al.
All right, guys. Glad to be here again today on this Wireless Buffet. Al Brown's President and CEO of SmartWAVE Technologies. And today, as our special guest, we have someone I've known for, I don't know, way too long, probably over 20 years maybe, but Terry Chau from CommScope. Terry, you want to do a little intro for us?
Yeah, thanks, Al. Hey, it was great to see you. Yeah, it's been a long time. But my name's Terry Chau. I am with CommScope. I came from the Ruckus acquisition 3 years ago, and I am the Senior Director of Large Public Venues for CommScope.
Sounds awesome. Great. Well, welcome both of you guys. Obviously, a lot to talk about in that space. So I guess maybe let's just start off with maybe Terry. What are you seeing in that space from a CommScope perspective?
Yeah, the good news is we're seeing a significant rise in business and opportunities. Obviously, with COVID, we had a little bit of a hiccup there in terms of people going to venues and it shutting down. But now with the return of fans, we're seeing a tremendous shift in mobile broadband access because of things that they were already working on prior to the pandemic. Things like mobile ticketing and cashless payments and so forth. And one of the things we are seeing is post COVID or with the return of fans, those things are no longer just a good to have. They're really necessary for the reopening of those venues. And fortunately for CommScope and for Ruckus, that infrastructure, that mobile broadband connectivity is what we provide. So we've been very busy. In fact, we should have some very good wins to announce here publicly very soon.
That's fantastic. Now, Terry, how long have you been in the high density public venue space?
So going on the 6th year. Prior to that, I was running territories with Ruckus. So as you know, that's where I had a really good run there with SmartWAVE, and it looks like that continues to be on. But it was a situation where the selling motion and the technical decisions were really complicated and complex in these venues. I say that the Wi-Fi and wireless inside a stadium with 100,000 people is the extreme sport of Wi-Fi, right? It wasn't designed for that. So you had to do a lot of really unique things, both deployment wise as well as software feature wise. So they wanted me to come over and help run that for Ruckus. And then when we got acquired by CommScope, who has the cellular side of the business, as well as copper and fiber infrastructure, it just made sense that if we're calling on these type of venues, that we bring that into a full product kit offering to them. And we've had a lot of success. I mean, CommScope's had that even before the acquisition of Ruckus. In fact, if you look at the 30 NFL stadiums, it's 32 teams, but they share venues. If you look at that, CommScope's DAS is in 21 of them. And if you include the infrastructure, it's 26, soon to be 27 of 32 of the 32 teams.
That's impressive. So when you do those networks for those type of areas, you just don't sling a bunch of APs and use auto channel and auto power. What's up?
No, yeah. So AP, a lot of the AI and smart stuff, people just think, hey, let's plug this stuff in and, it works at home, so it should work here. But, this is something that SmartWAVE is really good at, because it's both an art and a science in terms of how you make high density operate and work, whether that be in a municipal type of network, or whether that be in a convention center and an auditorium, or that be in a major stadium. If you design it incorrectly, it's obviously not going to work. You're going to get signal, You'll have 5 bars
Sure.
or whatever it is, but that's not exactly the way the protocol works, and contention's a major issue. So design, and the tools that we generally see put together in your typical, what I call the carpeted enterprise, isn't what is used when you do municipal type high density networks, or you do the stadium high density type stuff.
Right.
You really need a different tool set.
Well, I kind of explain it to some of our clients when, like, San Jose Convention Center, right? We host.
Yeah.
You talk about the kind of the Super Bowl of wireless or whatever. Twitch, right?
Yeah.
Twitch is if you guys don't know what that is, that's like a gaming kind of conference, right? So if you can imagine, 10,000 people in a confined area that's open, nothing to block RF properties, and you got to support those guys streaming video, that will hammer a Wi-Fi network, right?
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool to get involved in those types of projects. So you do have to cheat the RF properties somewhat. You have to have antenna segmentation. You can't rely on auto power or auto channel. You have to turn off certain radios like 2.4 because there's only 3 non-overlapping channels. That it can be pretty challenging. As I've explained it to a couple of different people that go, well, look, it's just Wi-Fi. I mean, I got Wi-Fi in my house, right? And it works fine. I can support my devices. And I'm like, yeah, that's great. I said, now invite 10,000 of your closest friends, put you all in the same room and see what happens.
Yeah.
It's funny how actually the expectations have shifted too, right? Like, I mean, you go to an event, like, you expect it to work.
Yeah.
You expect to be able to do all these things, and it just worked flawlessly.
Yeah. And there's there's so many conventions, like when you go to these trade shows, and it's a horrible experience.
Yeah. And a lot of their business, I mean, when you start breaking it down, it's based on bookings of events. That's what drives convention centers, and that's what drives whether it's an auditorium, arena, or whatever. And people just expect it as a utility, obviously, because they don't think about going to a venue and not having bathrooms, or they don't think about going to a venue and not having mobile broadband. And with the post-COVID situation, I think what we have seen is the hub for this digital transformation, what I call the more of less. They want it frictionless, they want it cashless, they want it touchless, and they want it ticketless. And those things now are kind of expected to be, there's no paper tickets anymore, no paper admission. Fortunately for the business that SmartWAVE's in, business that CommScope and Ruckus is in, we are kind of helping that dramatic digital shift that's happening in these high density areas.
What are some of the cooler applications that you're seeing now in the stadiums? I would think, especially like in NFL stadiums, everything from ordering, but there's a lot of data analytics that are involved in all that. I'd love to hear some of the coolest things you've been working with lately.
Well, I mean, the data analytics where you can actually kind of follow the VIP journey, or what they are trying to do is, if somebody's coming to a venue and they've come 3 times out of my 12 games that I have, or what have you, can I help identify who that is? Because if they buy 4, that's basically a package. I could sell that to them on a season ticket package, or I can bundle that together. And if they are coming a couple times, can I take that data analytics and maybe give them a coupon for the fan store or the food and beverage? We get a lot of those analytics things, both on the user side as well as on the network side. So one of the things that we've rolled out in Ruckus over the last couple of years is the Ruckus Analytics. So, getting the data coming, that's reporting both from what it's seeing out in the RF, as well as what it's seeing in terms of the network itself, and then applying machine learning algorithms and artificial intelligence so that it could detect anomalies and basically fix itself and optimize itself, which is that's an IT person's kind of dream is, set it and forget it. And I think we've done a fairly good job at Ruckus to try to do that. But the analytics kind of takes it to a different level when you can collect it all and sort through with machine learning and artificial intelligence.
And there's some pretty cool changes that are taking place in the Wi-Fi space with respect to standards and so forth. I mean, you want to kind of share kind of what's coming up and the impact it makes?
Yeah, so one of the biggest thing is this 6 gigahertz, 8 to 11, the E part of the spectrum, right? The Wi-Fi 6E piece, and that opens up 1.2 gigahertz of available spectrum. And everyone gets excited about it because obviously I haven't met a venue yet that says, we've got too much capacity. Can you?
Yeah.
So, and spectrum allows us to have that capacity to deliver, whether it's a augmented experience or immersive experience, which is another one of the trends that's going on at venues. So that's exciting. There's still a lot of the ecosystem stuff that still needs to be ironed out on that. But, Ruckus is rolling out the Wi-Fi 6E products. As that ecosystem starts to come up and also regulatory things get sorted out with the automatic frequency coordination, because that spectrum is encumbered currently by existing users.
Yep.
So it's not completely vacated, and we've got to coexist, but we've got the technology. Yeah, go ahead.
Now to clear, just to kind of dive into that a little bit further, 6E on the indoor space is allowable, correct?
Yes, the low power.
I mean, you can do that full game on. But where you're talking about other incumbents, that's in the outdoor space, right? So it's like 6 gigahertz licensed microwave point-to-point links.
Exactly.
And is that what you see is going to happen? Is there's going to be some type of spectrum bridge, kind of like CBRS, I guess,
Yeah, I think that's the goal. And, for my space in terms of stadiums and arenas, there's some rules around not being able to have it weatherized. It must not be battery powered.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Those sort of things. So if you do that, then that low power exemption goes off the table. Now you're considered a outdoor device. And now because of that, you have to have the AFC function, the frequency coordinating function. And so we haven't seen it take off. Well, there's tremendous amount of interest in it. And then when you start looking at the ecosystem, currently what we're seeing is that it's in high-end laptops and devices because it does cost another, chip, another radio, another filter, and all the other things that are going there. And we are seeing too that, where silicon manufacturers and a lot of the interest now is starting to shift to Wi-Fi 7. How can we take what we've done in Wi-Fi 6 and make it even better with Wi-Fi 7? And there's some interesting things that are being done in Wi-Fi 7 in terms of things that we didn't have in historically, where we can actually do frequency puncturing, where we can take a big channel, but if the part of that channel is interfered with or have some interference, we can actually shift dynamically down to a smaller set.
Wow.
And that isn't something we've historically had. And when we're doing stadiums, arenas, and conventions,
it's a fixed channel plan.
It's a fixed channel plan and fixed bandwidth plan, right? So, so if that channel has any contention or any interference, it's basically stops transmitting. And Wi-Fi 7, because of the puncturing capability, it can go and use a smaller slice of the good side of the spectrum.
Right. Very cool. Very cool. Yeah. So a lot of good stuff. But then, like you mentioned, the ecosystem, the devices have to follow to take advantage of it, right? The end user devices, the phones, the so forth. So, I mean, how long, like when you guys go into these stadiums, I just think about, are there any users that are still using 2.4 or do you have that just as an amenity kind of thing? Or
Actually, the shift started happening a couple of years ago, but what we did find is, you need to be surprised how many people still, from a laptop perspective, carry 2.4 stuff. Most of it, unfortunately, is media and press and so forth. They have their refresh cycle is relatively long. But yeah, it also depends on markets. It depends on what type of market you're in, not just in one region, but a lot of our venues internationally still has tremendous amount of 2.4, relatively speaking, just because those are longer refresh cycles for them, and it's cheaper. So a price point is an issue that generally becomes, but most of your venues now will take 2.4 out of the bowl because there's just not enough spectrum to and use that more for back of house. And then maybe put 2.4 in the concourse areas or in the press area and things of that sort for private use.
Okay. In a stadium, when it's actually being deployed, kind of what are some of the more challenging areas? I've heard of different things, from stadiums. We've seen different things. We've deployed different ways, right? APs under seats, different stuff that sometimes I'm like, well, that doesn't really make a lot of sense. You got to penetrate, signal through a body now, right?
Right.
So, I mean, what are some of the things you're seeing as a kind of standard?
So I mean, when you look at a stadium and arena, it's built for line of sight because it's trying to promote the product on the field, right? And that's encumbered if you have pilings or if you have something in the way. So it's kind of the exact opposite of how somebody would approach designing a Wi-Fi network, which is where could we have this RF be absorbed, contained, reuse the spectrum, so on and so forth. So it is a difficult design challenge, as you know. So there are really 4 different ways that 4 or 5 different ways that people approach it. The overhead is the most common, but when you're in an open bowl stadium, there is no overhead. So sometimes you can shoot it from behind, and there's some approaches to that. You have to have enough slope to overcome the human absorption. So it's overhead from behind. Underneath the seat seems to be the primary method now, but that comes at a cost because it costs a lot of money to X-ray that concrete, do core drills, run the cabling and so forth. And then there's also a approach of handrails, and that like everything else in wireless, the answer is always it depends, right? The angle that it is, and is somebody going to lean up against it and basically violate OSHA rules for us and things of that sort. But
ADA compliance, all kinds of stuff. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And so when we work with partners and stadiums, we look at what's available, because the first thing is it's similar to the municipal work that you do or the stadium work that you do. It's PBS, right? Site acquisition, power, and backhaul. Those 3 things need to be accounted for. And you can build any network as long as you have those 3 things, right?
Well, and every wireless technology is asset dependent, right? You have to install it on something, right? There has to be something where it has to be mounted to serve an area. If there's not an asset there, you can't serve the area. You're going to have a gap in coverage, right? So
the good thing in terms of underneath the seat, it's usually about 3 times the cost of other deployment models.
Okay.
But it does give about a 5 times better performance, right? Because now you're really containing it down to a much smaller group, as opposed to being up high, and then you basically covering a much larger swath of people.
Yeah. Are you guys seeing different types of antennas like designs being incorporated now. I know like in the outdoor space, right, to like isolate RF interference, we use horn antennas a lot, right? Just because it can capture the signal, the energy, and send it in a specific direction.
We do have, and this is kind of contrary to Ruckus, we have some external capable access points or external antenna capable access points. And that just gives us a lot more flexibility, because sometimes, as great as BeamFlex is adjusting its patterns and so forth, you may have a situation where it's a corridor or something that's very unique, and you want the ability to use a much more narrow antenna, like a patch of some sort, or maybe a 10 degree or 15 or 60 or something like that. So we do see those, but those I would say is more of corner case situation, because it gets more complicated. We like to use existing ones that we have, and then we just kind of use it around obstructions, or use it it makes deployment a lot easier. And we do have, not to go down the BeamFlex track too much, but we do have some advantages in terms of the antenna patterns that we can generate.
Yeah, well, I mean, as far as BeamFlex, I mean, just the value that brings, because you want to reflect off devices with MIMO antenna technology, right? And in a stadium, and it's open, right? As you mentioned, visual sight lines, right? All that kind of line of sight. You don't have a lot of things to bounce signal off of. So BeamFlex versus beamforming, because you hear, beamforming, we do beamforming, but that's not the same. Right?
It is.
You want to kind of get into that a little bit?
Yeah, it is amazing how, I've been here going on 12 years now, right? And when I first came in, there was a lot of confusion around BeamFlex and beamforming. We thought we addressed that pretty well as those years come on, but even today people are confused about it. And beamforming is basically adjusting the transmit timing on the downlink to try to have a signal arrive in phase to a receiver. So the analogy I use is if you scream at the bottom of a canyon and there's echoes, those echoes will arrive at different times. If you say hello really loud, it's going to say hello, hello, hello. If you could adjust those reflections so that your ear hears all of that at the same time, that's beamforming, right? So you hear a really good, you yell hello, and it just comes back to your ears at that receiver at the same time. Beamforming is shaping and molding that signal so that it's directed at the intended receiver. So what you can do with transmit beamforming is additive to beamforming. And that's why if we're getting 2 dBs on a transmit beamformer and we're getting 3 dBs on a BeamFlex, we're basically now 5 dBs. And then at the same time, we're also basically shielding the interference. So the sin R is really closer to about a 4x gain. So that's probably a little bit deeper than most people will want.
I think at the end of the day, Terry, what you're saying is it's going to be bigger, stronger, faster.
Exactly.
Right? With BeamFlex. Right.
It's and there's a lot of different analogies you can use, right? But that's what I was actually with a customer yesterday on a convention center, and they were talking about, this BeamFlex, and I said, look, I can dissect it down and write out the equations for you and why it should work. But the best thing to do is let me get some product in your hands, and then let you see it yourself. And
take some air magnet, do some tests. Give it a second, you'll see it adjust. I mean, it's really amazing.
It is pretty cool. And I've been in wireless now for a long time, right? A couple decades. Even when I came in early, it was kind of like, that's not possible, right? And then you see it actually happen. And I think, when we can get products into people's hands or get a good partner like SmartWAVE involved in showing them, I mean, it's basically our win percentage is significantly high.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. Well, guys, I know we're about running out of time. Lots of really great information. Just some of the stuff clearly is going to be changing and evolving to help provide better experiences for places like stadiums. Is there anything last, I guess, feedback or comments you want to share with the audience of like, hey, we're thinking about making the change, making the shift. What should they think about? And just as a parting thought.
Well, just as a parting thought, I mean, Terry, really appreciate you being on here today. Terry, I've known Terry for years, and he is the most technically brilliant sales guy that we've ever worked with. I mean, it's really amazing how he can take very technical terms and convert them into, very simplistic, with a very simplistic analogy, right? As obviously he did through the podcast, but faster speeds, evolution of technologies is coming, right? We're in a wireless world, right? Where it's an expectation of an amenity to have Wi-Fi connectivity, right? So looking forward to future, many years in the future doing these same things.
Awesome. Terry, any parting thoughts?
Yeah, no, thank you very much for having me on. I mean, I can tell you, there's a little bit of funny story. When I first came into Ruckus, SmartWAVE wasn't the highest on my list of partners, right? And but what I did find out is, my God, these guys, they're pretty fantastic. They actually don't sell, right? And that's kind of counterintuitive when you're taking over sales position. You're like, these guys don't sell. They actually consult and analyze what the issues are. And then they have a bag of tools. And fortunately, a lot of those tools that fits the job comes from Ruckus. So I'm absolutely thrilled. I think, how many years is it now? You guys are a partner of the year.
Yeah, 2009. At least. Yeah. So
it's many fire hydrant trophies that are stacked at SmartWAVE. And so I miss being able to work closely on the stadiums and arenas, but fortunately in some of the customer sets that we have, I still get a chance to work with the team here and there.
Yeah, a lot of fun.
Well, guys, thank you so much. I'm sorry, I'm actually losing my voice here at the end, but for more information on the Wireless Buffet, you can see us on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts. Al, Terry, thank you so much for the time, and have a great day.
Thanks, Nick.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers.
Cheers.